What's up, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here with Cheesehead TV, and I'm joined by Mark Eckel, who covered the Eagles for a little over 30 years, but also contributes to the Cheesehead TV Draft Guide, and penned a piece entitled "A Thompson Twin or Ted in Wolf's Clothing" regarding Brian Gutekunst. And Mark, I got to say, I loved this piece. I thought you were really fair, and you did a good job capturing Goody's kind of tenure so far. So well done, and thanks for joining me, man.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate that. Yeah, I talked to a couple of people off they anonymously, but
Right.
one actually worked with him for a while and knows him pretty well, and the other one never worked with him, but was a scout for another team who knew him. They traveled together as scouts often do. So I got pretty good insight from both of those men.
What do you think personally? I know you got a bunch of really good quotes about Goody, but what do you think, looking at it as someone who had obviously covered a team for a very long time? You've been around the league, you know how it works, and you've seen kind of Gutekunst operate now for a number of years. How do you think he's doing? Because I know in Packer fandom, I think people get blinkers on, and it's a very, it's very. I always talk about entitled town, and I think if you have the ability to kind of step back and view it, maybe from a little bit more experience, a wider lens, so to speak, across the league, how do you view the job Goody's done so far?
Oh, I like what he's done, both in a draft and free agency. I mean, this isn't. It used to be, and you covered the Packers a long time. I was busy with the Eagles, but I'll tell you my background real quick. I was a Packer fan from the time I could walk and talk because I'm from Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey. My godfather, my uncle Joe, was actually friends with Vince Lombardi. So all I ever heard about from the time I could hear and talk was Coach Lombardi this, Mr. Lombardi that, Vince Lombardi this. So how could I not be a Packer fan?
Right.
So I've been a Packer fan my whole life. So I always followed him, even though I was covering the Eagles. I mean, this for years under Ted Thompson, and nothing against Ted because Ted did a nice job and built a Super Bowl winner.
Right.
But you were pretty sure that from the time the last game of the season until the draft, you weren't going to be real busy.
Right.
Right.
I remember talking to guys on the beat who said they literally would set
Yeah.
their vacations at the start of free agency.
Yeah, they didn't have to worry about anything. I covered the Eagles where you never knew what was going to happen next.
Right.
But, now, Brian is a lot more, as the story said, a lot more Ron Wolf, who did a lot of things. I mean, Wolf, traded for Favre, brought in Reggie White, did a lot of massive big things. And when he had the money, a couple off seasons ago, he went out and signed 4 good starting players, both Smiths, Billy Turner, and Adrian Amos. 2 of the 4 are still there. The other 2 left on, but they had good productive times with the Packers.
Absolutely.
His drafts, I mean, the only big miss is Josh Jackson, who I would have missed on that. I mean, I think everybody liked that pick when he made it.
A lot of people thought he was a first rounder.
Yes.
I know this because I was tasked with writing the mock draft that year for the Green Bay Press Gazette, and I didn't have Josh Jackson in the first round, and all hell broke loose in my inbox. So I remember that. Yeah.
No, I mean, I thought that was a good second round pick. I remember after that draft saying, "Whoa, they got Alexander and Jackson. They're set at corner for a long time."
Right. Yeah.
I was half right.
I mean, they are set with Jair, no doubt about it.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the only, in my opinion, that's the only. Now, Love, I didn't hate the Love pick. I really didn't. I didn't hate it when they made it, and I still don't. And if you're going to tell me, well, it was a wasted pick because Rodgers has won MVP 2 years in a row since they made it, well, maybe that's why Rodgers won MVP 2 years in a row, because it motivated him again. He was not the MVP when they made the pick.
No, he was not.
He was coming off the 2 years prior. He was hurt, and the year after that, or no, I'm sorry. No, 3. He was hurt to McCarthy's next to last year. McCarthy's last year, he wasn't very good, to be honest, right? And
I mean, not to his standard, right?
Well, that's
not a throwaway.
Exactly. Right. He's better than still him. Rodgers on a bad year is still better than
a lot of people.
60% of the quarterbacks in the league or more. But you know what I mean. He was an MVP.
Absolutely.
He was not in the MVP conversation when they drafted Jordan Love. So drafting Jordan Love is what got him. Maybe that was a great pick.
It could potentially be. And it's interesting now because at the end of your piece, you touched on a couple things I want to follow up on here. At the end of your piece, you quoted someone who said that the Jordan Love pick will define Gutekunst and his tenure, regardless of what happens here going forward. And I do find it interesting because I remember having kind of that mindset. But now that Aaron's been re-signed and the potential for the Super Bowl window is still open.
Oh,
If they go and win a Super Bowl here in the next couple of years, does that love pick still define Brian? Like,
yeah,
even if they say, Aaron retires afterwards and Love does become the starter, I think having a Lombardi, even if it's with Ted's quarterback, it still defines who Brian is.
Oh, I didn't. I mean, I didn't necessarily agree with that. I thought it was a good quote though. So
It was a good quote, but that's what I mean. I wanted to get your perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, I got that quote prior to when Rodgers was still up in the air and didn't know whether he was coming back. And I think a lot of people at that point thought they might be trading him to Denver, and who knew what was going to happen. So that quote was gotten prior to Rodgers coming back and getting a new deal. So that's part of it. But I think what he was part of the rest of that quote was comparing Brian to Ron Wolf and Ted Thompson, in that he said, Wolf's first move was trading for Brett Favre.
Yep,
Ted's first move was drafting Aaron Rodgers. Well, Jordan Love fit into that comparison. Brian's first big move was drafting Jordan Love. So that's where, and that's kind of what it was. But I mean, I agree that if they win a Super Bowl, and this year, next year, whatever, I don't think the Love pick becomes as legacy making.
I totally agree. It's not as defining.
If they don't,
that's where it gets interesting.
Then maybe it is.
Right, exactly. There's no question about it. And the other thing that you brought up a little bit ago about the comparisons between Brian and Ted and Ron, and it was interesting. Something you wrote in the article that I thought was spot on is Brian's aggressiveness throughout the season in comparison to Ted. It's certainly more like Ron in the sense of, like, whether it's going and getting, a veteran corner last year in Rasul Douglas instead of letting Kabion Ento come up. That's 100% what Ted would have done.
Oh,
right. I mean, no question about it. But moves like that, I think, kind of paint Brian in a little bit more like Ron Wolf than Ted Thompson.
Yeah, that's what the one guy told me, the guy that worked with me, said, when he was hired, a lot of Packer fans thought they were getting Ted 2.0.
Right.
That's not what they got at all. He's not Ted. He's not. He has that same passion for scouting that Ted has.
That's true.
And he still believes, that he's a scout at heart. And like he even said at the combine, he was quoted as saying, "This is my favorite part of the job." There's a lot of GMs that's not their favorite part of the job. They're not really scouts. Especially more and more, we're getting more salary cap guys becoming
as that kind of as the cap, and I think it's because the cap has become so not unwieldy, but has become so intricate, and it is such a major part of roster construction. I understand how teams have maybe not suddenly, but have kind of leaned into the cap guy, right?
But if
you have a Russ Ball, you don't need to do that,
right? Well, he was almost a general manager, right?
I know. He was definitely in the running. I remember when it felt like a almost foregone conclusion that Russ Ball was going to get it.
Yeah, I mean, he was a favorite.
Crazy to think about now.
So, but that's a great combination. I think that the Packers have that. A lot of teams don't have. Having a Russ Ball handle all the money part of it and the cap and contracts, and then Gutekunst doesn't have to worry about that, and he can scout and grade college players and work free agency, and as long as you and the cap guy are on the same page, it works out very well.
And it sure seems like they are. Something I wanted to bring up real quick, talking to Mark Eckel here, definitely 100%. Please, guys, download the draft guide at cheeseheadtv.com and read his piece on Brian Gutekunst. It is excellent. But I did want to bring something up here. I pulled this from the graphics from the draft guide, and I don't know if you picked these or Al picked these, but we've got Brian's best and worst picks. Okay, so this is my question to you, sir, as I throw it up here on the screen. So we've got, and I think for the most part, I agree with almost all of this. Like for the best, Jair, Elton, Rashawn, Runyon, and Stokes. I'm with there. I'm maybe a quibble on Runyon, but other than that,
only because they got him in the 6th round.
Yeah, exactly, and he's become a starter, and I'm with you. But how do J.K. Scott or Hunter Bradley not crack the worst 5? That's my question.
Well, Bradley, the 7th round pick, I'm not going to.
But it's a specialist. I don't know. Even Cole Madison gave him a little something. I don't know.
I mean,
just
Scott, you're right. I probably could have put Scott on there, but since I'm an Alabama fan, I probably didn't want Alabama guy on
there it is. I love it. The
I'll be
thing
honest
comes
with you.
out. I love it. It all comes out in the wash. Well, Mark, I really appreciate you taking the
Oh,
time.
no problem, man.
And again, great job on the piece.
Thank you.
And we'll have to do this again. We'll have to
Sure.
talk again.
I'm around.
Packers fans, make
I'll
sure
come
you're
off the beach and help you. Don't worry about
awesome.
it.
Packers fans, make sure you're pressing subscribe, like, and all that good jazz you do on the internet. Mark, thanks so much for the time, man.
Thank you, Aaron. Take care.